What's up? We are already on episode 3, which is incredible, and I'm so excited to get into this next story. It's got a very special place in my heart. One, because these entrepreneurs are from Minnesota, which is where I used to live before New York. It's where I grew up. And on top of that, I love stories of couple entrepreneurs and just watching them go through all these hardships and stick together and be that kind of glue for the business. On top of that, it's a food brand. And I currently work in food. I am one of the founding members of a food startup. Not a founder, I'm one of the founding members. I do have equity in the company, all of that, and so it's, a passion of mine for sure. Okay, so let's get into this one. It's Angie and Dan Bastian of Boom Chicka Pop. We all know Boom Chicka Pop and we love them. I mean, their popcorn is incredible. So this story starts quite a long time ago before the business, because you probably want to hear a little bit about the relationship between Angie and Dan that got them to starting the company. So Angie actually grew up on a farm in Indiana, and Dan grew up in Mankato, Minnesota. Mankato is quite a small city in Minnesota. Angie ends up becoming a nurse. Dan becomes a school teacher, and they actually meet in New Mexico, which is where they're both working, and they meet at a party one night. 2 years after they meet at that party, they get married. They eventually come back to Minnesota. By this time, they have 2 children. Quite young still, but the entire time that they're kind of in their early part of their relationship, they have this dream to build a business together. They feel like their personalities work really well and are just very aligned, and they're both kind of restless people. They know there's something more out there than their 9-to-5s, and they want to do that together. So they're thinking on this for a while. They're thinking maybe a restaurant or a cafe, something involving food, something that they can just get off the ground quickly. At this point, it's 2001. They still haven't really landed on anything. Their children are, I think, like 3 and 5. They're like, okay, our kids are very young, but also in like 13 years, our youngest child is gonna be going to college, and we have no savings. And so many of our friends have these college funds set up already, but we don't even have savings for ourselves. So Dan gets into this habit every evening after he puts the kids to bed, and she's doing night shifts as a nurse, and Dan is home alone, just researching on the internet businesses to start. It's just a way, he doesn't really have a direction for it. He's just doing a ton of research, trying to figure out how they can work together and make that extra coin. One day he comes across an ad that says, make thousands of dollars every single weekend by popping your own kettle corn. It comes with one of those big metal things that you make the kettle corn in. It also comes with a table, a tent, all the things that you would need to be popping kettle corn at events on weekends. And he's so stoked when he sees this ad that he literally calls Angie right away. And she gets a call at work saying, oh, your husband Dan is on the line. You've got to go speak to him. In her head, she's thinking, is this like an emergency? Are the kids okay? She answers the call, and he's like, I've got it. Kettle corn. What do you think? And she's like, sure, if you think this is a good move, let's do it. So they pay the $10,000, they get the kit, and they start experimenting. They said that they burned, I think, the first 2 batches, and then they started getting the hang of it. There also wasn't really a recipe that came with this kit, so they're toying with things themselves, putting in the different sugar ratios, all of that. After a little bit of playing with this new kit, they want to launch, obviously. Angie comes up with a date. She says, November 21st is when we are doing our very first display of this and selling the kettle corn. What she didn't realize is, because she grew up in Indiana, not Minnesota, is that November 21st in Minnesota is like insanely cold. It's not a time to be popping kettle corn outside. But they post up in front of this local grocery chain called Rainbow Foods, and they pop popcorn on November 21st, and they make about $300 in the first day. At this time, they're called the Kettle Corn Cafe. Has a nice ring to it. As they do this, every single dollar that they're making, they're reinvesting into the business, which is an incredible tip for all of you people out there who want to start your own business. This is point number 1 so many entrepreneurs make, is that you shouldn't be paying yourself for a while. You should be reinvesting everything and putting everything into your business. And one day they approach the Vikings team about selling at the Vikings training camp. This is where a lot of people will come to watch the Vikings train. Oh, I should also say, if you don't know the Vikings, they are the Minnesota football team. They contact the Vikings people who control the food vendor, and they ask, can we sell our popcorn? They're like, what is the fee? Because it is always like a tabling fee. Otherwise, so many people would come without proper businesses to sell food there. The response they get is very funny. They say, yes, you can come and sell at this training camp, but first, will you just gift all of our Vikings players some popcorn for free? So they were like, yeah. They gift about, I think it's 120 or 130 bags. And the Vikings players love the popcorn so much. They end up getting approached from the Vikings team to be called the preferred kettle corn company of the Vikings team. Now they're selling at Vikings events. It started at the training camp, then it became the games, and they're listed as the preferred kettle corn company of this team that is so near and dear to so many Minnesotans' hearts. Back here, they really don't have any money to pay anyone to be working the booth with them. So literally every time they're posting up, it's friends and family coming to volunteer for the day and help them get this business off the ground. Angie and Dan talk over and over again about the importance community had on their business's growth. Another thing that is amazing were the COGS. What are COGS? COGS are the cost of goods sold. What are cost of goods sold? Well, it's everything that kind of goes into creating the product before it is handed to the customer. With normal food brands, it's the ingredients, it's the packaging, it's the warehousing fees, all of that. With them, it was pretty much just the cost of making the popcorn. Another thing to know on COGS is that you have to get really tight on them to run a successful business. If you buy, let's say you're selling apples, and you buy an apple for 10 cents each, and you sell it for $1, that's a great profit. If you were buying it for 90 cents, selling it for $1, you've got a terrible business model and the cost of goods sold are too high, meaning that the road to profitability is extremely tough. For Boom Chicka Pop or the Kettle Corn Cafe at this time, their COGS are incredible. I mean, the cost of, it's just like sugar, corn kernels, all of that. Oil, and then they're selling it for probably like 10x. They're making quite a big profit from that COGS number to the end selling number. As I mentioned, they're still funneling all the money back into their business. But in 2003, when they're 2 years into this, still have zero savings and they're getting kind of burnt out working all of these events. They are thinking, how can we get our kettle corn into more people's homes and mouths in a more efficient manner than working events? Which is the start of their packaged food company. Around this time, Dan quits his job to focus on the kettle corn business. Angie is still working as a nurse, and she becomes kind of the sole provider for the family as Dan is investing his time into growing Boom Chicka Pop. They approach this local grocery store in Minnesota called Lunds and Byerly's, and they present their product. They say, all these Vikings fans love our product. Everyone who buys us wants more. We'd love to sell at your grocery store, and we promise it'll be a success. Lunds and Byerly's look at the product and they're like, oh no. If you want to sell with us, you've got to get your shit together. You've got no packaging. You've got no nutrition panel. You're making this in your garage. You need to be posting up at a real kitchen. All of these things you need to get in order and then come back and talk to us. They do that. It's 2004 at this point. About 6 months after that conversation, they've got all their stuff together and they reapproached Lunds and Byerly's and get a deal to sell in the store. While they were going through this process of cleaning up their packaging and branding, they realized they kind of need to change their name from the Kettle Corn Cafe to something that's a little bit more punchy. Angie's walking around the store and she's looking at all of these cracker brands and popcorn brands, and she's baffled. She's thinking, there's so many brands with men's names on them. Where are the women in these salty snack food companies? She decides with her husband to call the company Angie's Kettle Corn. Now, as any founder of a packaged food company knows, right after you launch, you've got to start demoing the product in stores, getting people to taste it, and only then can you really get to someone's heart and get that repurchase coming. They hire this local Minnesota couple, they're retirees, and they tell this couple, they're like, we can pay you $8 an hour collectively if you guys can go and demo our product at grocery stores. This couple starts doing that. Angie and Dan are also doing it. It's important to note also that 3 years into the brand, they are insanely in debt. They have a mortgage, they've got all these credit cards, loans, all the whole 9 yards. But they have this faith. They have so much faith. And what they say in their interview with How I Built This, which is, as I mentioned, where I get a lot of the information for my videos. If you've never watched How I Built This, go check them out. And what they're saying on the podcast was, yes, they were in a lot of debt and it was scary, but they also knew that they loved each other so much and they were so creative and had so much faith that they would find success in their life, that even if they lost all their money through the venture of this kettle corn business, they'd have to pay a lot of people back and they'd be living in debt for a while, but they knew that they would make it in the end. And it's that kind of relentless optimism that is another kind of connecting factor between so many entrepreneurs that we see. It's a quality that you kind of have to have. It's almost a insanity of believing in yourself when no one else really sees the kind of end point that you do. Let's jump to 2008. They've been in this for 4 years, getting off the ground, getting their footing with retail, and they're just constantly hitting up Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's is kind of similar to Whole Foods. It's a deal that could make your entire brand. They finally, after just relentlessly contacting the buyers at Trader Joe's, sending loads of free product, they get a deal for 25 truckloads of product. That amount was roughly $400,000 to $500,000 worth of revenue. Normally, if a grocery store places an order for your food product, you send it, and then they've got about 60 days to pay you for that product. So it's not like they pay you beforehand and you can use that money to make all the product they need. They had to put serious cash down to make these 25 truckloads of product. They're very scared because they've got no money still. This is like the biggest opportunity they've ever faced. They find this letter in the mail that says, you qualify for this credit card, get $100,000 overnight. That's the exact amount of money that they need. They end up getting the credit card, getting $100,000 into their bank accounts the next day. They get to work on all of this kettle corn for Trader Joe. Right after the first 25 truckloads are dispersed around Trader Joe's all across the country, they get another order for 25 truckloads. This is when they say that their business totally shifted. Now, reminding you, this is 2008. They started in 2001. So they had to just believe that this opportunity was coming for 7 years. So everything starts moving in, speedy, fast-paced motion. Angie actually has to start freelancing as a nurse because she just can't do the hours of her normal nursing work because she's got to just be taking meetings with these buyers, and there's just so much to be done in the business now. Around this time, they get approached by a VC firm, which is every founder's dream. You get this big influx of cash into your business and it helps you scale much faster than you could have done. They really like this VC firm. They're quite like a small firm, and they really believe in Boom Chicka Pop. And, they provide them then with the ability to really refine like an operations team, a sales team, a marketing team, And once again, everything just starts moving a lot more smoothly with the business. They're scaling, scaling, scaling. Let's move to 2011. They're now in Target, Costco. They're everywhere around the United States now, but they're still called Angie's Kettle Corn. So they want to be, you know, even punchier on shelf. Go to a branding agency that got them the name Boom Chicka Pop, and that's the brand that we know now. With the amazing bags, I love their packaging so much. Even before I worked in food and fell in love with creative packaging, Angie's was always a brand that I took note of on shelf. Angie was really sick of going to stores and watching all the health food products be marketing that was very male oriented, or with the women health food like snack department, it was always like how to have as much food with the lowest calories and let's help you lose weight. She didn't want either of those. She wanted a fun bag that just oozed positivity and excitement and curiosity. This is also the time that they start making different flavors of the popcorn, which is wild because this is 2011. So we are 10 years in and they've only had this kettle corn this entire time. 2014, an even bigger private equity company buys out the former VC firm, and at this point, all of the equity that their employees had in the business became liquid, meaning that the employees could all finally sell their shares. Because early on, when you're working at a startup, you will get paid a salary, but a reason to work there and put so much of your faith and work all the extra hours in this business is because you're provided equity in the company. You have a small ownership of it. Whether it's a big firm eventually buying you out or the company going public, at that time you can sell your shares and make a lot of money. They talk about this day in 2014 being one of the most gratifying days of the entire project of Angie's Boom Chicka Pop, because they went into this wanting to have a savings fund for their children for college. And overnight, they watched all these employees who put in so much work over the years and put so much faith in them. Reminding you, we're in Mankato, Minnesota. It's not like people have loads of money there the way that they do in like New York, where I am. So overnight, all of these families just get the ability to sell their shares and make so much money. I mean, some of these people overnight are becoming millionaires. Angie and Dan obviously cash out a lot of theirs. They still remain with the business, but they also become way, way more wealthy. Everyone's kind of end point, it seems, with a food business is selling to one of the big guys, because this is what brings your brand from being something at local markets to something that has a legacy behind it. Something like Nestle Toll House or Cheetos, stuff like that. Those people are on a different level than your profitable, nice cracker brand on the shelves of Whole Foods. This is where things get even crazier. Angie and Dan aren't super involved in the business anymore, but usually when people come in to purchase your business, a lot of the founders have to stay around for a few years. It's just part of the deal. It looks great to the company, keeps morale up. 2017 is when they actually leave the business because the business is bought by Conagra. If you don't know what Conagra is, they are a huge, huge business that owns all of these food companies. Jim, they own Gardein, they own Ready Whip, they own like Udi's, the big gluten-free company. They own a lot of the big hitters. Hunt's, they own Hunt's. They purchased Boom Chicka Pop in 2017 for $250 million. This business that started as a kettle corn popping business outside of local sporting events, they just sold for $250 million. I mean, that's insane, and it's so cool, and it's just one of those stories where it almost gives you butterflies, because 16 years of hard work and just belief that they held for themselves, and strain on their marriage, I'm sure, but also incredible growing opportunities together. It pays off to an insane degree. I mean, like I said, they changed so many people's lives in Mankato. They changed their own lives, they changed their children's lives. Why did Boom Chicka Pop succeed? They're actually asked this question in an interview, and they honestly say that it's a combination between hard work and luck. They had a great recipe, but a lot of people have a great recipe. You know, it took other things like good timing for the market. It took all of the people volunteering and helping them out for years before it really took off. Lunds and Byerly's taking a chance on them sending product over and over again to Trader Joe's until they finally get a big break with them. With food brands, I think it's a little less easy to give exact reasons why they succeeded, apart from it was a good product and they found a good product market fit, people who believed in them, and had people continuously coming back for more. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching my third video. It would really help me out if you do enjoy this content to be liking the video, give me a follow. Obviously, I'm quite early on in my journey, but this is something that I'm so passionate about, and these stories are so important to tell. Even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, it's thinking about these life skills that are so valuable across the board. And then on top of that, highlighting people in our society who have really created a lot of innovation. And I'm just excited to be sharing their stories and sharing any of their wisdom that can come across to you and, you know, emanate from there. So thank you so much, and I will see you on my next video.